First, I wanted to say that I hope you and your families are staying safe and sheltering in place if need be. This coronavirus that is sweeping through the country and sweeping through the world is highly contagious, and it is best just to shelter in place to sort of flatten the curve and slow the spread. Now, recently here in Michigan, we were mandated shelter in place, so what that means is that we can only go out for necessity. So if we have to do a grocery run, we have to go pick up medications, for example, we can do that. But for the most part, it's advised that we stay at home other than exercise activities. So we can walk the dog, we can go for a hike, go for a run, but you really want to practice social distancing when you're out, 6 feet or more between people when you're running to that grocery store. And of course, you want to keep up with personal hygiene, so washing your hands thoroughly throughout the day is definitely a recommended practice. So I wanted to put together sort of a checklist or sort of a guide that resembles what I'm personally doing for shelter in place or for bugging in, and the preps that I have in place. Now, when it comes to prepping, I'm sort of your average Joe. You know, I don't have 25-year shelf life foods. I don't have 100 gallons of gasoline. I don't have 500 gallons of water, but I do have ways to treat water. I do have ways to prolong food, and I've got a lot of shelf-stable foods, but my preps are scaled back more or less for a month or a few months at a time. So that's really what we're going to talk about today, because I think that most applies to the situation that we're currently facing. You know, as they restock shelves, we can go out and we can replenish our supplies. As the as we get through this together, we can go and get fuel for our cars. But if those things were to break down, you definitely want to have a backup system, especially if there was another disaster that happened at the same time. You can imagine an earthquake in earthquake-prone areas, a tornado, a flood, for example. Those things are really going to compound this problem, not only for you and your family, but also for medical workers. And we need to just do our best to try to slow the spread of this, try to slow this thing down so that we're not overwhelming the hospitals, because that's when it's really going to become a big deal. So let's talk about the steps that I've taken to shelter in place. So I've broken this down into several different categories. We've got food, we've got water, we've got cooking that food, we've got sanitation, we've got first aid, we've got electronics, we've got tools, and we've got home protection. And then of course you have shelter is one of the necessities, but most of us are going to live in a home or an apartment or a condo. So I'm really not going to talk too much about shelter in this video. Sheltering in place is basically staying at your home or bugging in. So let's go briefly over these categories that I've put together. I don't want this to be a super long video, but hopefully it's a helpful video. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. So first off, we have food. Now, again, I don't have food stored for 25 years. I don't even think I have any MREs on hand, and you might say, whoa, that's crazy. But in Michigan, it's a pretty safe state. You know, we don't have earthquakes. We don't have too many problems with floods, at least where I am. We have the occasional bad storm, but what really hits us hard is a long, cold winter. So things like a power outage can really affect us. So again, you're going to want to tailor your preps to your certain area, and obviously make accommodations for those types of scenarios that could happen. But for me and my family, when it comes to food, for a situation like this, a virus that is sweeping the world, I wanted to have shelf-stable foods, so things like canned food, fruits, vegetables, the basic cooking supplies are important. So you have flour and sugar and salt and baking soda and baking powder and spices. Of course, rice and beans are a great thing to have on hand. You want protein, so as long as we do have power, and I don't really see that power being interrupted in this particular case, chicken and fish and meat, you can store that stuff, you can freeze that stuff, you can, of course, buy frozen vegetables, you can buy frozen fruits. So I recommend, packing your freezer full of that stuff. You obviously want to eat the perishables first, so any kind of fruits and vegetables, you want to go through that stuff first. And that's sort of what I've been doing the past 2 weeks that we have been sheltering in place. We've been going through the items that are going to perish first in our cabinets and in our refrigerators. And keep in mind, even though you can go to the grocery store, do you really want to until this thing calms down? It's good to have a backup of the stuff that you normally eat. So we eat a lot of canned green beans and corn and carrots. So we have that stuff, sort of stockpiled. We have soup stockpiled. We have noodles and pasta sauce and tomato sauce and stuff like that stockpiled so that we can put together meals. And it's actually been quite fun cooking meals that I wouldn't normally cook in the past few weeks. I made some banana bread the other day with some old bananas, and again, those basic cooking supplies. So that was really good. So in addition to that food, you're going to want to have water. Now, we have a bunch of water stored. So we have spring water stored in gallon form. We do drink a lot of water from the bottles, although we do have a well here. We actually have 2 wells here. We could certainly drink from those. But in the case of a power outage, again, that well's not going to work unless I hook it up to a generator. So it's nice to have some water to get us through. If you didn't have water or for some reason had to purify water, you can certainly boil water. That's going to remove viruses. You can use the water purification tablets that I just previously did a review on. Those will remove bacteria and viruses as well. And then you have your standard filters. So you have your hollow fiber filters that are going to filter out things like bacteria. Personal drinking straws, you could certainly use that as well. But it would be a good idea to stockpile some water. It would be a good idea to stockpile some other drinks that you enjoy, maybe some Gatorade, some electrolyte type drinks, some drinks that if you do come down with the flu, maybe some ginger ale, Vernors, things that are comfortable to you and your family. All right, so you got your food and your water pretty well stocked up. Now let's talk about cooking that food. It's a good idea to have a barbecue grill with charcoal. I bought a few extra bags of charcoal. We can grill that food, especially if the power were out, for example. We can use the barbecues to cook that food. I even have solar cookers that I could do chilies in or stews. Camp stoves that run off butane, those are a great thing to have and to use in a scenario like this. So being able to cook that food is pretty important. Maybe a cast iron pot that you could put over a fire if need be. Those are really good items to have on hand, not only for this shelter in place, but for future scenarios as well. So cooking implements and ways to cook your food is pretty important. Now this next one is particularly important for the virus that we have going around, and that's sanitation. We have all different types of Lysol sprays and wipes. So we have the spray that we spray down surfaces with. We have the wipes that we wipe light switches and doorknobs and the handles of the refrigerator and faucets. Anywhere that's highly touched, we wipe that down. We're constantly wiping down surfaces. We have hand sanitizer, which you're not going to be able to find at the stores as of this video. You can make your own. If you have rubbing alcohol, for example, you can mix that with some aloe vera. There's videos online showing how to do that. So you could make your own hand sanitizer. You could make your own cleaning solution out of bleach. So things like bleach and vinegar are a great thing to have on hand. I have a few big jugs of those. Obviously, you're going to want to wash your hands, so soap is very important. It's good to just keep your hygiene up in a situation like this, keep your immunities built up. So not only is it good to have a good diet, but it's also a good idea to have good hygiene. So things like toothpaste and toothbrushes, you want to make sure you have a backup of that stuff. Along with trash bags, let's say the trash service stops, you're going to want to be able to bag up your trash and maybe set it in the garage in an area where it's not going to affect the rest of the family if you had to start piling that trash up for a few weeks, months even, if that trash service were to stop. And then finally, toilet paper. I know there's been a mad dash on toilet paper and you can't find it anywhere, which is unfortunate. But toilet paper, goes a long way to keep yourself clean. There's other ways to do it. You could use a bidet. You could use washcloths, cut up t-shirts. There's all different ways that you can go number 2 and dispose of the waste. But toilet paper, if you're able to get your hands on some, it'd be good to have a supply of that as well. Moving on into first aid, every family should have a first aid kit. If you get cuts or scrapes, you're going to want to be able to place something over those along with some antibacterial cream, and most kits are going to include just that. Along with a first aid kit, you're going to want to include any sort of medications that you or your family is on. Now, it's a good idea to stock up on those medications. So if you have refills available, maybe get those refills now, just in case the pharmacies do shut down for a period of time. You're going to want to have that medication on hand. If you have devices that help you breathe, CPAP machine, for example, make sure that all the equipment necessary to run that is charged and is available. Now, in addition to my first aid kits, I also have N95 masks. I have about 100 of them. I do wear them if going grocery shopping, for example. Not so much because I'm concerned about getting the virus, but for me, I do touch my face and my nose and my mouth a lot. So for me, it's just a preventative measure to keep me from touching my face before I'm able to wash my hands. So a mask of some sort, although they are in high demand and you're not going to find any anywhere, if you do have those supplies on hand, maybe move them with your first aid kit and keep that stuff all together. Another good addition to a first aid kit is some sort of first aid book. There's many good books out there. It's a good idea to have. Maybe someone comes down with something and you're not sure what it is. It's a good idea to have that information on hand. Again, if you can't get seen at an urgent care, if you can't get seen at your regular doctor, and it's something that you can self-treat, a first aid book or manual is going to go a long way there to help you out. Next up, we have electronics. You're going to want to have flashlights and headlamps and lots of extra batteries in case the power does go out. You can use candles at night, for example. Especially those of us with kids, it goes a long way to keep things as normal as possible. So if the power's out all night and there's just nothing running and it's pitch black, it's a good idea to have some light somewhere so your kids can associate with that. It's also a good idea, just if you had to do something in the middle of the night, to have a headlamp, for example. It gives you that hands-free lighting option. You can also use things like glow sticks, and again, I mentioned candles. Good idea to have that stuff on hand. It's a good idea to have a shortwave radio. If communications go down, for example, if we can't use our cell phones, if we can't use internet, more and more of the workforce being sent home because of this, you never know when things could break down. So without the capability of people to go out and fix it, so shortwave radio is a great thing to have on hand if you want to keep into contact with what is going on. And then, of course, a way to charge up those electronics. So I have an energy solar charger, any kind of battery bank that you have. Take advantage of the time that you do have now with your power and charge all that stuff up, just in case there is some sort of a further emergency. You're going to have that stuff charged up ahead of time. If you have solar panels, that's great. Get them out, make sure they work, and test all that stuff and replace all the batteries in your electronics as well. I have a category for tools. Just a basic tool set is a great thing to have. The hardware stores are shutting down, so if you needed to make some sort of a repair around the house, it's a good idea to have a hammer and nails. You could fix a piece of sheathing that fell off, or maybe you have a door that came off a hinge or something like that. Things like that you're going to want to fix, and you might not have the resources to do so, and you might end up having to do that repair yourself. So hammer and nails, obviously pliers and wrenches and screwdrivers, and a saw. Those are all great things to have on hand. I think most of us have that stuff on hand, but get it together, put it in a certain place, make sure it's all back in the toolbox so you know where it is if you had to use that stuff to make a repair. Again, duct tape it works for pretty much everything, so it might be a good idea to have a couple rolls of that on hand as well. The final category I have here is home protection. Now, I think the biggest thing with home protection is to group up with your neighbors and do sort of a neighborhood watch. I live on a dead-end road that doesn't see a lot of traffic, so when we do see a car that comes down that we don't recognize, everyone notices it right away, and we are in contact with each other. You can also share supplies. If one person has something and you can give them something in return, maybe they have a lot of frozen fish and they need some vegetables or something, and you have a bunch of cans of soup, you can do trades like that as well. It's a good idea to have your locks working in working order. I've gone through and I've put deeper hardened screws into all my locks, into all my thresholds, to make sure that stuff can't be ripped out as easily as possible. I've upgraded all my locks in the house to the highest level of lock protection that you can have, and I've also installed a security system. So things like that are going to deter people from wanting to come in and take what you have, especially when it comes panic time and people start to freak out and they can't find this stuff other places. Houses and areas of low security are going to be the next place people look. And of course, It's always a good idea to have a firearm and ammunition. I won't go into that too deeply just because it's sort of frowned upon on YouTube, but I do have several different firearms and a decent amount of ammunition if push really came to shove. So that's it. That's the categories that I am pretty well prepared for, the categories that I think matter when it comes to a shelter-in-place situation. None of us know how long this is going to last, hopefully sooner than later, but hopefully you gained something from this video, maybe learned something, or at least hopefully have the motivation now to sort of get your things in order and stock up on the things that you might be missing. So again, I hope you and your family is safe. If you feel like it, you can share this to any friends or family on your social media. For now, the social media is working, and it's a great way to social distance ourselves. If you have any comments for me or questions, make sure to leave that in the comment section below. And if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so by clicking that red subscribe button, and make sure to click that notification bell.